And we're seeing that across the board, at lower level manufacturing. Everybody's gotten kind of in trouble with the manufacturing facilities in China over the pandemic and ran into shortages, ran out of stuff, couldn't get it, got tangled up in this transportation chaos that we had. And they all learned a lesson. And I think this is a major shift in how the United States is now looking at globalization.
Interesting. So we're de-globalizing before our very eyes here, right? And where does that leave China? Where does that leave the world?
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Hey, we got real pleasure with us today. And our good friend Wolf Richter from wolfstreet.com is with us now. Wolf, I avidly read your site because you have a take on things that very few others really can approach. And I know, like, when you write an article, you've really thought it out. So first thing, we were talking pre-call, commercial real estate, office buildings, especially in major cities, kind of going the way of the dinosaur, huh?
Thanks for having me, Kerry. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the astonishing developments over the last few years, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse, that companies have learned during the pandemic that they don't really need all this office space. So they have hoarded office space before the pandemic. As soon as something came on the market, they grabbed it to grow into, because there was so little on the market. There was an office shortage in cities and tech cities like San Francisco and Seattle. I mean, the people were talking about the office shortage, and Facebook and Google nabbed some office space. And then the pandemic came and working from home took over, and companies realized they, number one, don't need all of this empty office space that they thought they would grow into. And then number two, they started trimming down their office attendance and would even need less than what they already had. So we have a gigantic mess on our hands now with these office buildings. Over a third of them are on the market for lease in San Francisco and in some other cities in Dallas. And Houston has been the same issue for many years because of the oil bust in 2016. And so that has hit Houston very hard. But now it's spread across the country, really. And there's no good way out here.
There's no good way out. So is the solution like the old buildings in New York? They were like perfectly set up to convert to residential because they were a certain distance, the wall to the elevator core. And I saw numerous, literally dozens and dozens of buildings in New York City converted, buildings that were built like in the 20s, 30s, early 40s. But the newer buildings, the emphasis was on, basically maximum floor to air ratio and the steel buildings, so that they're not really practical to convert. The space is too big.
Yeah, that's correct. Especially the buildings in the 1980s and later, there are, and depending on the footprint, if they're big square footprint, they're very expensive to convert. And then in that case, you're looking at the land value. That's what a building like that is worth. Its land value. It has to be torn down and redeveloped into residential. And that's one of the big steps. And there are some buildings that can be converted, especially narrower buildings, and that may be the cheaper route to go than tearing it down. And so they're doing some of that. And the suburban office buildings, of course, with big parking areas and like a 4-story office building, a 3-story office building, they're very easy to tear down. And it's like a shopping mall. You have several acres of land there and not a lot of building. And so that's easy to tear down and put a large residential development on it. But in these downtown office towers where you have a relatively small lot and a huge building on top, it's essentially land value, what these buildings are worth today. And of course, that's not the collateral value that was assumed when the loans were taken out on these buildings. So you have this huge amount of money that's now being lost in commercial real estate.
Right. So people aren't shopping anymore. They don't go to malls. They don't go to offices. What are people doing now? There's no more retail therapy. Your retail therapy is going to Amazon, and you don't need to go to the office anymore. So you just stay home and order stuff. I don't know what the world's coming to here, Wolf.
Yeah, I mean, I think the shopping on your smartphone and on your laptop is still sort of a form of therapy for a lot of people, and they're doing it, and they're doing lots of it. And online retail has been booming, of course, and brick and mortar stores are having trouble. I mean, like Walmart's online business is just surging in 20% plus growth rates year over year. And grocery sales are really doing well in brick and mortar stores, but the rest of it is just really hard hit. And I don't know what people are doing. And we go out hiking on weekends, and we see lots of people out hiking on weekends. I mean, they're doing stuff. It's not like they're sitting at home, they're doing anything. And there's entertainment, and they're doing all kinds of stuff out. And so, I never thought personally that shopping was anything I wanted to do, and even before the internet, I bought via catalog. So
I don't know. I guess you just don't get the dopamine hit. It must be a gene. Some people are born to shop, and others aren't. And those who are not just get no gratification from all those shiny new objects. Speaking of shiny new objects, so we have a building boom. Factory boom taking place. I assume a lot of it is AI generated because we need these huge data centers, right, to basically house all the AI computing systems that are going up. But there's more to it than that as well, isn't there?
Yeah, so this particular article I was writing about is the manufacturing facilities that are being built at an extraordinary pace. The data centers are in a separate category, and there's also a boom going on, but that's not particularly what I was talking about. I was talking about manufacturing, actual factories. So, and I've listed a whole bunch of announcements that were done last month, and a lot of that is chip makers, and now we've got the CHIPS Act that's trying to reshore chip manufacturing to the United States. And of course, the money hasn't started flowing yet. The announcements have been made, but the actual disbursements haven't happened yet. So that's still going to show up. But the world's largest chip makers are setting up shop in the United States to produce chips. And they're doing it in Arizona, they're doing it in Texas, they're doing it in Ohio, they're doing it in all kinds of places. And these are gigantic, very expensive production facilities on one of those factories. So the construction itself is not that expensive. What's expensive, what's going inside these chip manufacturers, and that's not even included in the numbers yet. We're just talking about the building costs. And our construction of factories has doubled and tripled. So this is really that's a good movement. I mean, factory construction had stalled for a decade, or more than a decade, and manufacturing output in the United States has stalled. And automakers are still heavily represented in the United States. So all the world's automakers are manufacturing in the United States. But overall, we're the number 2 manufacturer behind China. We should be the number 1 manufacturer, and given the size of our economy. And so I think it's a good thing to see that there is a sort of a reshoring going on. It's not that manufacturing is being brought back. It's that new facilities are no longer built overseas. They're now built in the United States. So it's not that these jobs are coming back. It's that these new jobs are being created here. And, of course, the different jobs, engineers and advanced degrees and those kinds of people that are really highly qualified that are needed for those plants. And And we're seeing that across the board, at lower level manufacturing. Everybody's gotten kind of in trouble with the manufacturing facilities in China over the pandemic, and ran into shortages, ran out of stuff, couldn't get it, got tangled up in this transportation chaos that we had. And all learned a lesson. And I think this is a major shift in how the United States is now looking at globalization.
Interesting. So we're de-globalizing before our very eyes here, right? And where does that leave China? Where does that leave the world? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we get from other places, some more friendly than China. We don't have to worry about IR theft as much. I think everybody does IR theft, IP theft, rather. Intellectual property theft, I think it's a global epidemic. Everyone's stealing from everybody. The Chinese were just like, that was the price of admission for their market. But everybody steals everybody else's intellectual property, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's a big issue. And you have a little bit better control over your IP when you manufacture in-house, when you manufacture in the United States. And in China, of course, many major manufacturers who set up, all of them really were forced to share their IP with a Chinese company. So that was part of the deal. And they didn't even need to steal it. That was just part of the deal. And yeah, you think that you stay ahead of the Chinese developments that way because you're smarter and you can develop new things by the time they figure it out. You're a few years ahead. But that turns out to have been a miscalculation, and the Chinese have caught up. I mean, the European train makers went through the Japanese high-speed train makers. You know, they all had these IP sharing agreements with China, made their trains over there to sell to China. Now China's making its own high-speed trains and is selling them overseas in competition with the European and the Japanese makers. So this is how it's happened in now Chinese cars. They're showing up everywhere, and EVs especially. Countries are trying to protect themselves from this flood of cheap EVs threatening to come in. And so this whole thing has turned around. And I think manufacturers are seeing the risks of exposing themselves to the supply chains in China. It's just a very risky thing. They have paid a huge price for it during the pandemic. They're still paying a huge price in terms of loss of IP. They're now competing with companies that help form in China. So, there's a come to Jesus moment here, I think, that we've had. And it's a good thing. It happened probably 10 years too late, but it's a good thing to see that happening.
Yeah, I think so. And the EV thing. So if you read the paper, they would have you believe, or read the media, the legacy media, that EVs are flagging and sales are lagging, but not true, is it?
No. I mean, Ford just came out with its May figures for sales, total sales, and its EV sales are up 65% from a year ago. So, I mean, everybody cited Ford as backing off. Well, I mean, Ford made some miscalculations. They had some product problems. They had some supply chain problems. They had all these issues that Tesla had years ago. And so they couldn't really do all the things they wanted to do. And they can't get the manufacturing costs down quick enough. And they've got all these issues, but the sales are not backing off. The sales are up a bunch. Yeah. And among all the legacy automakers that got into EVs, they're whatever they can build, they can sell. It's not like there's no demand for them. There's plenty of demand for these EVs. Obviously now there's a lot of competition. Tesla has a lot of competition. I'm glad to see that. So we're not just one manufacturer anymore. It's not everybody trying to do it. If GM is coming out or has come out with a bunch of new models, and they're taking off. And they had the second best-selling model, the Bolt. They killed that one, but now they're coming out with the new models, and they're selling. Of course, they have the supply chain problems and they have the quality problems. They have all these issues that you have when you start developing a brand new vehicle. But, demand's there for those vehicles.
Yeah, definitely. And, you just see it. You see more and more of them on the road. So what's your take, though, on what it does for between AI and between electrification, whether it's good or bad, it's irrelevant. It's happening now. Personally, I think the cars are potentially a lot better if they're electric. They do a lot more technologically. All the self-driving also kind of overlaps with AI. But electrical generation in the country, the grid, is it up to the task here? And what do you think it means for utility companies' profits and dividends?
Yeah, so EVs are really a good thing for utilities. I'm more worried about the data center, the AI data centers, and also to some extent the cryptos. But EVs generally are charged, usually are charged at home, and that's usually done at night, off hours, especially if you have a time of use pricing. So you do that after midnight, and that's when the grid has the smallest load. There's a lot of idle capacity. And so utilities can actually sell electricity during a time when they have to carry the grid without really a lot of revenue. So that's really a good thing for utilities. They're loving that. The problem is AI data centers. They're gobbling up a huge amount of energy, and that's during the day, that's at night, that's all the time. And I'm not sure where all this electricity is going to come from. Obviously, utilities like to be in a growth industry. They like this. Electricity consumption in the United States has stagnated since about 2007. And so this is for the companies that are doing this. This is a good thing. They're now in a growth business. They can build power plants. They can build power lines. They can maintain them better because now they're having revenues and growth in profits, and electricity prices have been going up. I mean, consumers are bitching about that, but for the utilities, this is really a pretty good situation. When you have that kind of growth, then investment becomes easily justifiable. They can issue bonds, 30-year bonds to build a power plant and to build out the grid, and they're doing that. So they will be able to meet demand if they see this growth potential is there and it makes financial sense to invest in it. And it's not going to be a smooth path, but that will use that to build out their capacity.
Hey, what do you think of the Tesla battery centers, the megapacks? Gigundo stacks of LFP batteries that are used to kind of equalize the load. So and plus, they have the ability to buy up all the cheap electricity. Now, in Florida here, my rate's 13 cents per kilowatt hour, but off-peak, if I was to switch back again, it would be 7 cents per hour off-peak and 25 cents per kilowatt hour peak. But in places like Georgia, they let you buy the energy for a penny per kilowatt hour off-peak. But obviously, commercial, industrial users get far more preferential rates. You think that's going to be a vital part of the electrical grid going forward, Wolf?
Batteries?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. There's an arbitrage now as a motivation behind installing these batteries, because you have power surges during which electricity becomes very, very expensive. So power demand surges, and then they're brief. They may only be an hour a day, and the spike or electricity on the wholesale market gets very, very expensive. And then you have periods where there's potentially excess production of electricity, and especially from renewables that you don't really turn off. I mean, unless you have to, because there's no fuel costs involved. So you run them all the time as long as there's wind and sun, and you end up over-generating electricity, and some of the power drops into the negative. They have the prices, they have trouble. So you have a battery installed that can charge up when the electricity costs are very low, and they can sell the electricity. So it pays very little to get the electricity, and then it can sell the electricity during the day when the demand is high and the prices are high. And that's the arbitrage. And so people are making lots of money doing that. And so now, because of this huge profit motive behind it, battery installations are surging. They're going on all over the place. And what they're doing, in effect, they're taking the spikes out of the grid. And that's a really good thing, because the grid has to be able to handle the spikes. It has to be built big enough to all the spikes, or else it collapses. And with batteries being able to take out the spikes, that is a huge thing for the grid. And I think it's a game changer.
Yeah, I agree. And you had plants that they called peakers, and they were just there. Their only purpose in life was for peak demand. So now, if you get enough of these batteries, you'll be able to eliminate the peakers, which weren't really necessary. And then you save for nighttime your cheapest electricity, which is by and large nuclear in existing nuclear plants. New nuclear plants still through the moon. So it sounds like it's really going to be have a major impact. Over time, they just can't quite build them quick enough right now. Musk says that the megapacks could be like the major source of profits for the company in the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah. Anyway, you find Wolf over at wolfstreet.com. Link is in the show notes. Questions or comments for Wolf or myself, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. Hey, Wolf, it's always a pleasure. Always interesting speaking with you. We'll have you on again soon.
Thanks, Kerry.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.